Where are you in your deliberations?
Thinking about it seriously. I think what my effort is focused on is getting national security issues back to the center of the overall political debate. That's where they should be. They've slipped out of it these last 6 years, and that's what I'm focused on. That's why I'm thinking of running to help accomplish that.
As much as people say this is a stronger field than your party had 4 years ago, it is weak in national security. Almost no candidate, prospective candidate with anything like the foreign policy experience you have, and that most people think the party needs in terms of both politics and substance. Of the candidates and potential candidates besides yourselves, which ones would you single out as being also possibly able to contribute to elevating national security?
Well, I don't really see myself as the Standard & Poor's rating agency of the other candidates. They've got to defend themselves on that point. But I think the overall concern I have is that we're talking here about the single most important issue that a president has to address. Just to take any issue and try and argue it's more important than the safety and security of the country itself. It just baffles me that the conventional political wisdom is that voters don't care about national security. I think that's wrong. I think the people understand how important it is. I think they demonstrated it in the 2014 election. So I'm determined to overcome that political conventional wisdom, and if I can, then I think the other candidates will join in the debate.
I want to ask you about some issues, but I want to try again the question I just asked you. Are there any other candidates you'd single out and say that person is knowledgeable about foreign policy, taking that part of the role seriously? Any one or two you'd like to say, or you think doing well in that area?
Well, if I answered the question again, I'd just be repeating myself.
Well, no, but you want to name Governor Christie or Jeb Bush or anybody you think.
As I say, I don't think that's my function, is to be Standard & Poor's or Bloomberg's and rate the different candidates. Let the voters do that.
Okay. How concerned should Americans be about what's happening in Yemen right now, and what should the U.S. government be doing about it?
Well, I think they should be very concerned. The government has now collapsed. This is the end of an ongoing process of the disintegration of authority in Yemen that began almost 4 years ago with the Arab Spring. The consequence we have now is that in the territory of the former Yemen, we have the al-Houthis, which are an Iranian surrogate, in effect, at the back door of the oil-producing monarchies of the Arabian Peninsula, threatening the Saudis, the Emiratis, the Kuwaitis, and others. And at the same time, you have al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula, a terrorist group that's taken credit for the Charlie Hebdo massacre, that's been behind attacks in this country, also posing a threat. I believe, actually, those two groups will work out a modus vivendi not to attack each other, so they can attack, respectively, their opponents, many of which are the same people.
What makes you think they'll work that out?
Because I think in the short term, it's that neither one really wants to control the entire country of Yemen. They want a base of operations from which they can carry out attacks elsewhere. So I think that will develop, maybe has already. What that means for us is that the acute threat of terrorist attacks, not just in the Middle East, but around the world, is growing. And even as we speak, there are reports out that ISIS has executed one of the two Japanese hostages that they have, so that this barbarity continues apace.
Donald Trump talked about a big issue for the U.S., which is trying to deal with China. Well, how would a President Bolton get more leverage over the Chinese than our recent president seemed to have in military, economics, international relations?
Well, first, it would start to help to have a policy at all. And not simply to be concerned about currency manipulation. The fact is, China could be a responsible stakeholder in world affairs, but that's only one scenario. They're engaged in a massive military buildup and modernization. They've got one of the most sophisticated cyber warfare programs in the world. They've got programs to destroy our satellites that provide our intelligence in terms of pictures and electronic intelligence, and we simply are not responding. The President's reducing the size of the Navy.
How do you get the leverage?
Increase the size of the United States Navy from its pathetic level now of 287 ships a day.
Does that help us with cyber war or with economics?
It would help us with military adventurism in the South China Sea and the East China Sea.
What about economics and cyber war?
I'm addressing security now. In terms of cyber warfare, I think the United States needs considerably greater attention and effort, both defensively and offensively, and not just in the government, but in the private sector too, because the private sector is particularly vulnerable to cyber attacks more so in some respects than conventional military attacks. I don't think we've given it the priority it has. If there's a silver lining in the cloud of North Korea's attack on Sony Pictures, I think it is to have raised that issue. And economically, we need policies that support economic growth in this country. I think the President's policies have inhibited the economic recovery. I think one of the central points is the relationship between foreign and domestic policy. You need a strong American presence in the world to sustain the global economy. You need a strong American economy to sustain a strong American presence abroad. So these are absolutely linked together.
Who are the kind of people President John Bolton would have as Secretary of State?
Well, I think that is the kind of speculation I'd rather not engage in at this point, because it's personalities really get in the way of the policy. And if we don't get national security back at the center of the debate, naming names is kind of beside the point.